Brazil was solved. England survived. But surviving Haaland is not the same as escaping the pattern. Because the World Cup does not always punish the weakest team. Sometimes it waits for the favorite to think the danger is gone. And that is why England versus Argentina is not just a semifinal, it is a second test. Brazil showed the first warning. Norway carried the weapon. England survived the damage. Now Argentina get the next chance to expose whether England actually escaped the trap or only survived one version of it. This is not a normal match preview. This is the pattern before the favorite falls. Brazil did not lose because of one random moment. Brazil lost because Norway forced the match into a shape Brazil did not want. For long stretches, Brazil looked like the bigger team. More territory, more control, more expectation. But that is exactly where the trap begins. The favorite starts to believe control means safety. Then, one long ball changes the emotional temperature. One defender turns, one midfield line hesitates, one second ball drops into the wrong zone. And suddenly, the match is no longer being played on the favorite's terms. That is what Haaland did to Brazil. Not just with goals, with fear. His presence changed the space before he even touched the ball. Brazil could not defend the match normally because every loose ball felt dangerous. Every clearance had weight. Every transition had panic. Every recovery run looked late. That is not luck. That is a mechanism. And when the mechanism hits a favorite, the scoreboard is usually the last thing to break. The shape breaks first, then the confidence, then the result. England saw that warning. They knew what Norway had done to Brazil. They knew Haaland was not just a striker in that game. He was a pressure system. And still, Norway dragged England into uncomfortable territory. England won. That matters. But the lab question is not only who won. The lab question is what the match revealed. England survived the pressure, but they did not erase it. They were forced into stress. They were forced into recovery. They were forced to answer after the game had already become dangerous. That is not clean safety. That is survival. And survival can be misleading. Because when a favorite survives once, everyone relaxes. The media calls it character. The fans call it belief. The dressing room calls it resilience. But the World Cup often sees something else. It sees the open lane that almost killed you. It sees the second ball you did not control. It sees the reset window where your shape was too slow. And it gives that information to the next opponent. Chaos. Variable 1. Fear gravity. Some players do not need 20 touches to change a match. Haaland's real threat is not only the shot, it is the space defenders refuse to leave, the line they are afraid to hold, the second they hesitate before stepping forward. Brazil felt it. England felt it. But Argentina create fear in a different way. Not always with raw speed. Not always with one monster runner. Argentina's danger is emotional control. They are comfortable when the match gets ugly. They do not need a game to be clean. They can live in fouls. They can live in delays. They can live in broken rhythm. They can live in the moment where the favorite wants order. And the game gives them chaos. That is why this semifinal is dangerous. Because England survived the obvious monster. Now they face the slower trap. Chaos. Variable 2. Second ball panic. This is where favorites start to leak. The first ball does not have to be perfect. It only has to make the favorite turn. Once the favorite turns, the shape bends. Once the shape bends, the second ball becomes the real weapon. That is how an upset stops being random. It becomes repeatable. Brazil were punished when the match became messy, late. England survived when the match became messy, late. Argentina live inside that kind of match. They do not need England to collapse for 90 minutes. They only need one sequence, one loose clearance, one bad foul, one recycled attack, one midfielder arriving half a second late, and once the favorite feels the match slipping, the panic index rises. That is the part most previews miss. They talk about names, they talk about formations, they talk about history. But semifinals are often decided by the moments between structures. The moment after your attack breaks, the moment after your fullback is high, the moment after your center back has to defend facing his own goal, the moment after the crowd realizes something is wrong. That is where England must be perfect, not for the whole match, for the reset. Chaos. Variable. 3. Slow reset. England's danger is not that they cannot dominate. England's danger is what happens between moments of control, after a turnover, after a long clearance, after a blocked cross, after a midfield duel where the ball spills sideways. That reset window is where World Cup semifinals are decided. And Argentina are built to smell that window. They can slow the game down. They can draw contact. They can make the favorite defend emotionally. They can turn one mistake into 5 minutes of pressure. This is where survival becomes a warning sign. Because if England only survived Norway by answering late, Argentina will ask the question earlier. If England only survived because the final action went their way, Argentina will attack the process before the final action arrives. And if England start the semifinal believing the Haaland problem is finished, they may walk straight into a different version of the same pattern. This is where the bracket starts to bleed. Norway beating Brazil did not only remove Brazil, it changed the psychological route for everyone left. England did not just inherit a semifinal, they inherited the aftershock. Every team left has now seen that a giant can be dragged into a match it does not want. France know it, Spain know it, Argentina know it, England know it most of all. The bracket is no longer a path, it is a pressure machine. And the pressure machine does not care how big your shirt is. It only cares where your fear appears. For Brazil, the fear appeared behind the defensive line. For England, it appeared in the reset moments. For Argentina, the opportunity is clear. Make England play after the first plan breaks. Make them defend the second phase. Make them feel that surviving Norway was not the end of the test. It was the beginning of the next one. The lab verdict is uncomfortable. England are alive, but alive is not the same as safe. They survived Haaland because they found the answer late. But Argentina ask a different question. Can England stay calm when the match slows down? Can they avoid giving away emotional momentum? Can they control the spaces after their own attacks break? Can they survive a team that has made suffering part of its identity? Brazil showed the first warning. Norway showed the pattern was real. England showed the pattern can be survived. Now Argentina will test whether survival was growth or just delay. And that is why this semifinal is dangerous. Not because England are weak. Because favorites usually break at the exact moment they start believing the worst part is over. If this World Cup keeps breaking giants before they understand the pattern, the next warning may already be forming. Subscribe to World Cup Chaos Lab before the next favorite falls.